Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook can join us now. Hi, Alex.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. How are we?
Yeah, not too bad. As I said, I think people, Everton
mystified.
Seem to got wind of this a little bit earlier on. We're going to chat to Kieran Maguire a little bit later on, because a point Andy was just making there off air, and Everton have kind of made in their statement the kind of scattergun nature of the way these points deductions are arrived at. They say we're concerned by the inconsistency of different commissions in respect of points deductions applied. I'm sure Kieran, who's read all 80 pages of the Forest and Everton charges, will tell us why the tariffs are different. But it's not very transparent, is it, for the average football fan?
No, it isn't, and I think you have to have sympathy with Everton over that. We've had numerous different independent commissions now, numerous different appeal hearings as well, and every one of them seems to come up with a different number in terms of points deductions. While we were on an ad break there, I was actually just sifting through some of the documentation the Premier League have released in the last 20 minutes or so, and they do seem to indicate there's a correlation in this judgment between the number of points that Nottingham Forest were deducted for their own PSR issues and this decision they've made in terms of Everton. They say they don't feel that it's disproportionate to take the 2 points away from Everton based on the fact that Forest, of course, were hit by a 4-point penalty. The amount is interesting in terms of the actual breach. It's around about £16 million that Everton have overspent. It's just an extra year on top of the charge they've already had for a 3-year period. So obviously, as you mentioned already from their statement, they're claiming a little bit of double jeopardy here as well. They feel they've already been punished for much of this period. And they're also suggesting, I think this will be the basis of their appeal, that the £16 million overspend is offset by the fact that Alisher Usmanov, the Russian who used to help bankroll the club, he was paying £20 million a year in sponsorship. He had to withdraw that when the war in Ukraine started. And I think where Everton are really unhappy, there's a suggestion, I understand, from the Premier League that they could have foreseen that war in Ukraine and should have planned for it accordingly, which sounds frankly ridiculous.
If the Premier League vote to use different rules, Crookie, or increase the 105 million, surely the clubs that are being punished are going to look at it and think, well, this isn't right either.
The trouble is, Andy, it's not the Premier League, it's the Premier League clubs. They collectively decide to change these things. They implement them and they change them. So they've all got a say in it. These aren't being imposed on them, Alex, are they?
No, you're right there. I think we have to get away from this idea that the Premier League are just a collection of men in suits. Obviously, to get any kind of resolution passed by the Premier League board, you have to have 14 votes in favour. So the clubs did vote for these regulations. They voted for them some time ago, and I think Andy's point about the £105 million they're allowed to lose over 3 seasons, I'm not sure that's really in proportion with the way the game has changed in terms of the wages and the transfer fees that Premier League clubs now spend. Of course, that blows the rest of Europe out of the water. There's a lot of clubs, Newcastle for one, who have very wealthy owners who want to be able to invest more of their own money and can't under these PSR rules. So I think a change is coming, but that will only add to the frustrations for Everton and Forest because they'll feel that they're the two clubs who've really been made an example of. And I do think part of the reason we're seeing this happen this season is because the Premier League are desperate to avoid the independent government regulator getting too involved in the way that their business is run. So I think there's so many different strands to this. I'm also told, by the way, that initially when the Premier League passed on their findings to the independent commission, they were recommending a 5-point deduction this time around and a 12-point deduction over the first breach that Everton were found guilty of. So if that had gone through, we'd be talking about Everton sat here on minus 17 points, which of course would have effectively consigned them to relegation to the Championship.
Between the government regulator and these rules, I don't think they're going to be happy till they've ruined the Premier League. And they need to be really careful, because I remember when Serie A was the best league in the world and everybody thought, well, that'll be like that forever, and it isn't. You know, and you shouldn't assume that just because you're the best league in the world now that you always will be. And if you can't sign clubs, or if other clubs have to sell the top clubs their best players, I can't see how that's going to work. How that can only end badly.
I think you're spot on, and obviously we've got the threat of the Saudi money now that wasn't there before. I think we've got a situation where Jude Bellingham has chosen to go and continue his career at Real Madrid rather than joining a Premier League club. Who knows, Erling Haaland may well follow that path in the next couple of years as well. And I think what we don't want to do is drive away the best players to go and play in another competitive league, and I think that's why the Premier League clubs are probably going to vote very quickly to bring in changes on the PSR rules. That could happen as soon as this summer. But we've also got the slightly partial situation now, and we've mentioned this a few times on talkSPORT. We could be heading into a period where we get to the last day of the season. Everton go to Arsenal, for example. The full time is blown. Arsenal could be champions. Everton probably won't know or could not know where they are because they might not have heard the appeal verdict. And I don't think we can really be in that situation. We can't go into a final day of the season whereby clubs don't know effectively what they're playing for. But there is a backstop for that because under Premier League rules, all of these appeals have to be heard and decided upon by the time they meet for their end of season AGM, and that takes place a few days after the final ball of the season is kicked.
That would be so damaging to the Premier League and the product, as they like to call it, and they're fiercely protective of it. You're right, Alex. That'd be a disaster. Maybe they'll work it in. Maybe everybody's on their transistor radios or on their phones in the crowd, and you get that. Well, we've just been deducted another point 5 minutes before then. Stick the ball in the corner. Wouldn't put it past them. Alex, thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
We'll catch up with you later. It's Alex Crook there. We are going to have a chat with Kieran Maguire, football finance expert, to find out, really. As I said, he's probably the only person in this country who's actually read all 60, 70 pages of these charge sheets, so there's no one better to explain why Everton feel that the tariffs are a little bit scattergun. Let's speak to a former Evertonian, and again, hopefully give us a bit of an insight into the way players may be feeling about this. Kevin Campbell, former Everton striker, joins us. Hi, Kevin.
Afternoon, guys. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. I was saying earlier on, if you're an Everton player in the dressing room today, you've gone into training after a big win and you probably found out you've had another 2 points deducted. You've got to keep picking yourself up. It can't be easy.
It's definitely not easy. You knew something was happening. That's the big problem. Sean Dyche, he's having to manage up, isn't he? Because the players keep getting knocked down by. I understand the clubs voted for this, but when you actually look at what's going on, what is it, 8 points now that they've been deducted? 8 points is a lot of points when you're battling down there. If they had them 8 points back, they'd be virtually safe. But they're making it so difficult for Everton and Forest.
Yeah, they would be. I mean, they'd be 14th.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Everton's fixtures though, they look as if they can win at least 3 of those games. So I think they'll be all right.
Kind of destiny in their own hands, Kevin. When they're playing quite a few of the teams round and about them in the league before the end of the season.
Yeah, they are. And the funny thing, guys, is when you're a footballer, when you do the business, you don't expect the points to be taken off you. So you've got to get yourself up again to go again. And that's going to be the toughest part for Sean Dyche. They're going to appeal.
Can they feed off it?
They went on a good run, though. When they
did. I'm just wondering, Kevin, can you feed off this? If you're in a dressing room, if this was you in a dressing room and you're feeling like everybody's against you and that's another 2 points, I suppose it can galvanise a team, can't it?
Well, it definitely did earlier on, didn't it? Those 10 points galvanised the whole club, to be honest. But listen, we're really at the business end of the season now. 2 points ain't the end of the world, I've got to say, but they're going to have to appeal it because that win against Burnley on Saturday, that means it was a draw. Getting 2 points taken off.
Right. Yeah, they may as well.
In effect. Yeah,
if they drew at the weekend. I mean, obviously you get the lift from getting the 3
as long
points.
as they stay up, they'll be fine, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is like John, the Evertonian, was saying. They just don't want to be doing this reset, whether it's an ownership or moving to the new stadium or shaking things up with the club and having a bit of a new dawn. You don't want to be doing that in the Championship, Kev, do you?
No, you don't. And getting 2 deductions in a year, there's got to be questions as far as I'm concerned. 10 points reduced to 6. fair enough, Everton took it. But another 2, listen, I don't know enough technicality. I'm sure your man's coming on after will give you all that. But as a player, you feel pretty vindicated. You feel targeted, and you're not going to be happy.
No, absolutely.
Because it seems like your club is being victimised.
Do you think they've got enough on the pitch from what you're seeing, from what you saw? I mean, they didn't put in a great performance at the weekend.
Their
but
defensive record will help.
Yeah, it's true. Their defensive record was very good, but you're feeling they've got enough to stay up based on what you've seen recently on the pitch.
Yeah, the key is Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring again. That's the key. Everton have put in some really good performances, but they haven't been able to put the ball away. Now he's stepping up to the plate. He's back moving in the right direction, scoring goals. I think Everton will be all right.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it, Kevin. Good to talk to you. Thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.